محمد الهادي البشير قد جاءنا حقا نذير.
Contingency means that a thing needs something else to make it the way that it is. The sun needs something to make it shine. The wind needs something to make it blow. The leaves on the trees need something to make them green. When we do science, we assume the contingency of the universe. That's why we search for explanations for why things the way that they are. Science assumes contingency. But science says that these contingent things in the universe can be explained by other contingent things in the universe. Science will say that the shining of the sun can be explained by nuclear fusion. It will say that the blowing of the wind can be explained by differences in air pressures. And it'll say that the color of the leaves can be explained by a pigment called chlorophyll. But then that opens up a host of other questions, because all of these things, nuclear fusion, differences in air pressures, the chemical configuration of chlorophyll, all of these things are contingent. They need further explanations. Science goes on. The argument from contingency says that a never-ending series of contingent explanations doesn't explain anything, because there's nothing real for any contingent thing to depend on. It just passes the buck to the next thing. That's why when you add contingent things, you don't help solve the problem, you make the problem worse. You don't just have one thing to explain, you now have 2, 3, 4 millions, billions, trillions of contingencies to explain. The contingent universe was made the way that it is by a being, by someone, something that is necessary, not contingent, that doesn't need anything to make it the way that it is, that doesn't resemble any contingent thing in the universe, and all contingent things in the universe depend on it. It does not depend on anything. This being exists, and this being is not contingent. And also on scriptural grounds, millions of children all over the world, they say Allahu Samad, a short verse from an important surah in the Quran. Allahu Samad means Allah is the one on whom everything depends and who He Himself doesn't need anything. Necessary being. Many other verses in the Quran. I'll explain that in a separate video. But the point here is that if you believe that God is not contingent, then the question, can God create a rock that He cannot lift, is a loaded question. It makes a false assumption. And it only makes sense, it can only be asked if someone believes that God does lift things, that God does change, that God can become weak, that God, in other words, is contingent. The answer to the question is to say, your question assumes that God is contingent, but God is not contingent. This knowledge is really important. Please help me spread it far and wide by liking this video, subscribing to this channel, and by sharing this video with as many people as you can. It could save someone's faith.
صل وسلم ربي وأنعم